December 7th, 1941. The day that changed the world. Forever. December 7th, 1941, was the last day in history, after which the world map was about to change forever. A disaster was about to strike a naval base, something no one had anticipated. On one of the battleships, an African-American cook named Doris Miller would wake up early in the morning, serve breakfast to the Navy officers, and then proceed with his laundry collection duties. At exactly 7:57 a.m., Doris heard a siren, one that no one in the service ever wanted to hear. He rushed outside and was stunned to see the entire sky filled with Japanese bomber aircraft. In the blink of an eye, it was as if doomsday had descended upon the entire naval base. The Japanese aircraft systematically began destroying American ships. This attack was carried out on the Pearl Harbor base. Today, we will explore why Japan dared to attack a superpower like the United States, why a cook named Doris Miller was awarded America's second highest military honor, and why the US ultimately dropped nuclear bombs on Japan. The lead up to war. Our story begins in 1941. During World War II, the US had put everything on the line to protect China. Ironically, in 2023, the US now openly opposes China, but back then, things were different. World War II had already been raging for 3 years. On one side were Germany and Italy, while on the other were Britain, the Netherlands, and France. The US had remained neutral, having suffered heavy losses in World War I. The country wanted to stay out of the conflicts in Europe and Asia. However, Japan was continuously provoking America. Lacking natural resources, Japan aggressively occupied neighboring territories to meet its resource demands. It had already seized control of Korea, Taiwan, and large parts of China. Japan also had its eyes on the Pacific regions, including the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The problem was that Malaysia was a British colony, Indonesia was under Dutch control, and the Philippines belonged to neutral America. Japan's expansionist actions were not well received by these countries, especially because Hitler was backing Japan, and both Britain and America considered Hitler their enemy. In July 1941, the US imposed an oil embargo on Japan. Since Japan imported 80% of its oil from the US, this was a devastating blow. The US gave Japan an ultimatum: withdraw from China if it wanted oil supplies to resume. For Japan, this was a tough decision. If they withdrew from China, the world would see it as a sign of weakness despite Hitler's support. On the other hand, without oil, Japan's military power would diminish rapidly. Japan made its decision. It would not withdraw from China. Instead, it devised a secret plan to invade Indonesia for oil. However, reaching Indonesia wasn't easy. Since Indonesia was a Dutch colony, Japan first needed to capture the Philippines, an American territory. Japan knew that attacking the Philippines would prompt an immediate American military response from Pearl Harbor. But with dwindling oil reserves, Japan had no other option. Instead of attacking the Philippines first, it decided to launch a surprise assault on Pearl Harbor. The attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan, secretly prepared its forces for the attack. Its fleet included 2 battleships, 39 submarines, 30 destroyers, 414 bomber aircraft, carried by 6 aircraft carriers. On the other side, Pearl Harbor had 8 battleships, 59 anti-aircraft ships, several submarines, 390 aircraft. The US had enough firepower to counter Japan's attack, but only if they had prior warning. Japan ensured complete secrecy, avoiding any wireless communication. After traveling 8,000 kilometers, the Japanese forces were now only 370 kilometers from Pearl Harbor. At this point, the aircraft took off for the attack. At exactly 7:57 a.m. on December 7th, 1941, 350 Japanese aircraft struck Pearl Harbor in 2 waves. The Americans, completely unaware of the attack, were caught off guard. The first wave lasted for 45 minutes, raining down gunfire and bombs. Just as it seemed the attack had ended, a second wave arrived 10 minutes later, causing even more destruction. For 1 hour and 15 minutes, Pearl Harbor was under relentless attack. By the end, 20 vessels were destroyed, 8 battleships were sunk, over 300 aircraft were obliterated, smoke and fire engulfed the sky. Among the chaos, an African-American cook, Doris Miller, was aboard one of the American battleships. As mentioned earlier, he was in the middle of his laundry collection duties when he heard the sirens. As he stepped outside, a Japanese torpedo struck his ship, injuring the captain and several officers. Doris, without any formal combat training, single-handedly moved the wounded to safety. Then he took control of an anti-aircraft machine gun and began firing at the Japanese planes. He managed to shoot down 6 enemy aircraft. For his bravery, Doris Miller was later awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest honor in the U.S. Navy after the Medal of Honor. America's response and the road to Hiroshima. After the attack, the Japanese aircraft returned, but they had already dragged the U.S. into World War II. The very next day, America declared war on Japan. For the next 3 months, the U.S. worked tirelessly to restore its naval base. Fortunately, many ships had sunk in shallow waters, making them salvageable. By April 1942, the U.S. was ready for retaliation. In April 1942, the U.S. launched its first counterattack, bombarding Tokyo. But this was just the beginning. Over the next 4 years, the war between the U.S. and Japan intensified, with America gradually gaining the upper hand. Despite heavy losses, Japan refused to surrender. Finally, in August 1945, the U.S. decided to use its ultimate weapon, the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, at 8 a.m., a Boeing B-29 Superfortress aircraft flew over Hiroshima and dropped a 4,400-kilogram bomb, codenamed Little Boy. Exactly 43 seconds later, the bomb exploded, turning everything white-hot. A massive fireball erupted, raising the ground temperature to 5,000 degrees Celsius. This was the first nuclear attack in history. Over 80% of Hiroshima was instantly reduced to dust. Japan's military leaders were left in shock. Before they could respond, on August 9, 1945, the U.S. dropped another nuclear bomb, this time on Nagasaki. This bomb, codenamed Fat Man, weighed 4,670 kilograms and obliterated the entire city. These 2 nuclear attacks forced Japan to surrender, effectively bringing World War II to an end.